So now we're going to talk about site visits. We're going to just basically do a review of what you should do when you're on a site visit. I know many of you have been stewarding for many, many years, but it's kind of a nice just refresher, because that's what this is a refresher. So bear with us. Things that you can't do on a site visit. You can't go and use an ATV, UTV, or motorcycle and still be covered by the workers' compensation insurance from the federal agencies. However, we are getting a couple areas where we might be able to, so I will keep you updated if you are one of those people who has one. You can't carry firearms and be covered by the workers' compensation insurance. We definitely don't want you collecting artifacts and fossils. The whole point of being out there is to protect the stuff. Do not create an impression of authority, because even though you're working as a volunteer for the federal agencies, you're not actually one of them. And it's easier we should call in one of them should there be a situation where there needs to be an authority. And don't contact or discuss your site or stewardship with the media. If you have a reason to be interviewed by the media, talk to Rayette and myself beforehand, because we will give you a feel for what you can and can't talk to. Because you can talk about being a site steward. You just can't talk about your site. I just had somebody who say, does that include e-bikes? I think it's everything that's not road, that doesn't have a real road license plate.
So what it means, Julie, is that you won't be covered by workers' comp insurance if you get injured on your e-bike. So you can get to your site however you choose legally, but they're not going to cover any bodily injury to yourself if you get injured while on that, whatever it is.
Okay. Preparing for your site visits, make sure you notify your check-in person ahead of time and give them the paperwork that they need for that particular area. Let them know where they're going and what your plan is. Check the weather conditions if you can, and dress appropriately for that. Then make sure you have all the necessary stewarding supplies. You can have monitoring reports and site packets, and any sort of emergency paperwork you should have with you. If you're the type who doesn't want to hike with a lot of paperwork, a notepad, and make sure you still have all the emergency paperwork stuff. You can take that with you, whatever makes you comfortable, but make sure you stay safe at the same time. Site assignment forms. So these are things that have only happened in the years since I took over. And what they are forms that give you all the basic information for your sites. And basically they include things like the agency, what office it is, things that you find on your monitoring forms, site name, your site number, directions to your site, a description of your site. We try to put maps on there and helpful photos so you can re-find your site. And it basically just covers all those basics. So that way, when you go to fill out your monitoring reports, you can refer to it. If you guys want site assignment forms for your sites because you've never received them before, please let me know, and I will be happy to send them to you. We're actually in the process of expanding them to have like a full baseline, a dated baseline, but a full baseline, so that way there's a reference for everybody. But that's not going to be in those for another year because I have to, there's a lot of sites. We're working on that. Okay. Baseline photography. I don't know if Greg was going to cover this part or not, so I'm going to ask him if he wants to unmute and stuff and take over.
Yeah, I've got this in my paperwork.
Okay, so Greg Nord, the regional coordinator for Red Rock, Desert National Wildlife Refuge, and the Spring Mountains, is going to tell you what you should do when you go to your site.
Okay, everybody. The baseline photography is kind of that reset we try to do every couple of years, so that we're not constantly looking or thinking that damage out there is new damage. So if we reset everything every couple of years, then that kind of goes away. We have a starting point each couple of years. Obviously, the things we want to see are making sure that all the signs are still there. We want an overview of the whole site. Some of the bigger sites, that's pretty impossible, but you can still get kind of an overview in photography of kind of what the approach to the site looks like and give some idea of how big it is. As you move into it, obviously the major features, artifacts, and the context in which they are in is really the important part of that, to make sure that, you know, that we still have everything we thought we had and that it's not damaged. If you were to run across visible damage during the baseline, you'd want to report that in a normal report. But the idea here is the visible damage, we want to record it in the baseline so we know, again, that's our starting point. From here on, we know that was there prior to the baseline. So we don't have to report it unless, of course, it gets damaged again. And then things like when you're on the site, make sure fencing is there. Out in Red Rock, we have a number of springs that are fenced off because we don't want the horses and mules going into the springs, trampling it down so the water can't get out. So we want to make sure those signs stay up. Okay? Whoever's going to the next. Samantha, can you take me to the next? Yeah, there we go. Okay. This is the idea of, this is kind of what you should have and how to handle your regular site visits. You know, it says here, bring all your notes and photographs. For a lot of the sites we have, you'd have to carry an awful lot of material with you. I usually review all my pictures of that site that I'm going to before I go, and I carry my last two set of what I call field notes for that site. And then when I get there, I can look at my field notes, kind of go through that and make sure that what I'm seeing is what I saw last time, or there have been changes. Obviously, if there are changes, and this doesn't matter whether it's, you know, a boulder's out of place, or there's graffiti, or, you know, there's been horses walking through the site, definitely take photographs of that. And if you have GPS coordinates, so we know where that is. Again, detailed notes are pretty important. I don't try to document what I see out there in my actual documentation that I'm going to send off. I have what I call my field notes, and it's usually on 1/4-inch graph paper that allows me to organize it kind of well into a outline format. And it also tells me if I need to draw something, I can draw it at least somewhat to scale. You also can't take too many photographs in this kind of stuff. And again, remember, we need to see approach photographs. What does it look like from a distance? And maybe what's in the background, so we can orient ourselves to that. Then maybe some overview photographs of what the area around it looks like, and then details. Again, the context, if you're taking pictures of artifacts, in what context are they in? Getting your reports in quickly is really important. I know we had what turned out to be an ARPA investigation down in one of my sites near Jean, and we actually had 2 site steward teams out there, one being introduced and another one that had been introduced about a year before that. So we had a lot of current information, current pictures, and were able to provide that very quickly so that the law enforcement could get a handle on stuff right away and get started on their investigation. If you do see significant changes, and I think Logan actually talked about this, if you see things that have really changed a lot, I mean, lots of boulders out of place, wood scattered around, that kind of stuff, definitely follow the land manager, what some of Samantha just showed you, who to call next when you see that kind of stuff. Okay, so what to do on every site visit? This one here kind of gets to an old military term that I learned a long time ago. I call it situational awareness. While you're driving in, make sure that you're looking around. If the road you're on has had a lot of traffic, or you see motorcycle or ATV trails alongside of it, or maybe somebody drove their Jeep up off the road out into the desert, that's all stuff that may be important. Take note of it, maybe even stop and take a picture. As you approach the site, what do the signs look like? Were there signs there before? Are they still there? Are they readable? Has they been damaged by humans or animals or even the weather? What about fences? Again, we have fences out in some of the Red Rock areas to keep the horses out. Are those fences still in good shape? Are the signs out there in good shape? Have gates been opened or closed? Are locks that are on the gates damaged, or are there signs of somebody's been tampering with the locks? Things like that can be very important as you move into the site. As Logan said, the more information that we have about what happened, not just in the site, but around the site, is extremely important. Once you're starting to walk your site, I'm looking for foot traffic, whether it be animal or digging from animals or humans. If there's a lot of foot traffic, I want to know about what it is. Do I see boot prints? If I do, I obviously try to avoid them. And in fact, kind of on the other side of that is, as you're walking into your site, I try not to make obvious signs that I'm going in there, especially if it's an area where most people are not going to tear through the bushes to walk in. So even though you want to get in there, you don't want to take a machete and cut down all the bushes on your way in. A lot of sites I look at now, the mountain bikers are out there. Red Rock has got a lot of mountain biking trails, and with this COVID thing, a lot more have been, new trails have been added, not legally, but they're out there. Another site I have where we have a lot of boulder fields. Some of those boulders are small enough to carry off. So you're checking the condition of each of the features in the artifacts. Somebody's been carrying off a boulder. There's going to be an obvious hole where that boulder was. That becomes very important to note that. The checklist for the monitoring, which is outlined on that form in red, that's kind of a nice thing. I usually, even as long as I've been doing this, I review that either while I'm at the site or before I go out there. I just want to try and remember what to look for. And some of my sites, I actually even have a checklist of my own, because it always bugs me when I spend 3 hours at a site and I get 10 miles from home on a 30-mile drive and go, damn, I forgot to look at that. So I make checklists for myself. The other thing I look for, like I said before, foot traffic, but also possible other visitations. And if there's people there, as Logan said, I don't approach. If it's possible to get a picture of something, I'll take pictures. but I am in total agreement with, for God's sakes, don't do anything that puts you in danger. But you do have to think about, the crime scene stuff. So walking in, if you see a lot of trash, I don't pick it up on the way in. I wait till I've gotten to the site, and if there's a significant damage, if there's rock cairns on the way in, if there are collector piles, that sort of thing, I don't move anything until I know the site is reported as at least is not higher than a 2. If I'm going to report it as a 3, I'm probably not going to touch anything, and I'm going to leave everything there. If I'm reporting as a 2, rock cairns, it drives me crazy to see rock cairns all the way into a site. And, it says dismantle a rock cairn. To me, that means distribute the rocks. Don't just kick them over. Because if somebody's looking for cairns for a way in, if you just kick it over and there's kind of a pile of rocks there, they'll probably take that as a cairn anyway. So I redistribute stuff. Collector piles, again, sometimes I'll distribute them. Other times when it's really, really an important thing, like a small metate or a rock or a stone hammer type thing, we'll hide that somewhere. If we do hide it, we take a GPS point right on top of it, and we take pictures of where it was when we found it, and also where we hid it, so we can always get back and show people if we have to.
Hey, Greg. This
Yes.
is Rayette. By hiding it, can you explain what you mean? Because I know you mean not to bury it.
Oh, no, we don't bury anything. If there's a lot of bushes around, we'll set it kind of underneath a bush. Sometimes if there's a lot of rocks, like in a shelter, and there's a hammerstone or something, we'll kind of put it with the rest of those rocks and just make it look like a natural set of rocks laying there. Maybe spread a little dirt around it so it looks like it's been there for a while. But again, a picture of where it was and a picture of what it looks like now. So if we need to, for some reason, show law enforcement or one of the archaeologists, we can find it again. Does that make sense to everybody, I hope? So anyway, again, if you've changed anything, my personal opinion is not only do you take pictures before you change it, but you take pictures after you changed it. That way, again, we have a way of knowing what has happened and what you did versus what somebody else did. I think that kind of covers what I was supposed to cover. Are there any questions out there?
Thank you, Greg.
Sure.
Really appreciate that. So, since the regional coordinators do most of the site introductions, I wanted one of them to tell you guys what was going on. Plus, they have a different view on it than I do. So I thought that would be good. On this slide where you see the highlighted stuff, if you come across these things, when you go to fill out your monitoring report, don't just check these boxes. When you check these boxes, please describe what you mean by that. Because sometimes I'll get a checkbox for graffiti, but no description. And then I'm trying to figure out what graffiti, where is it? How do I explain to law enforcement where it is? They can go and check it out and all kinds of things like that. And it's so much easier to do when you guys go check the box on graffiti and say that which part of the site it's in and where is it located and what kind of graffiti. And even though you took a picture, sometimes we can't gauge the size. So you can explain that it's tiny little glyph on the side that somebody scratched in, or somebody put a name on the thing and it's painted in spray paint that's a mile wide. Not a mile wide, but you know what I mean, where you're trying to give us a better idea of what we're looking for. because these reports go to law enforcement. Logan is used to seeing them along with the other law enforcement officers.
And Samantha, there was one other thing
Sure.
that I was going to say, and that is I think somebody's going to talk about the photographs.
Yep.
But it's really important to get a photograph that kind of shows the approach and then maybe an overview from 15, 20 feet away, and then the details.
Yep.
Because if you think about it, and you send me 5 pictures of a flat rock with a 3-inch petroglyph on it, and then say, look at the graffiti next to this, and that's all I get, and I'm in the middle of a boulder field, I'm not going to find that. So anyway, I think it's extremely important to get those overview photos.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple other things. One is sometimes I'll get monitoring reports that have the boxes checked from existing. So there'd be a 0 level impact to the site, so nothing's changed, but they'll still have graffiti marked. I think that's a way of them just saying the site contains graffiti. So that can be a little confusing. So those boxes are for letting us know what new impacts have happened. And then we just got a question. Collector piles should be scattered. They just want to confirm how that works. And Samantha, you might want to mention National Park Service.
Yes. So collector's piles, we would recommend get scattered. And actually, so when you find them, as long as they're not historical, like they're not in your like they weren't in the site description, they are probably there to kind of be a flag for hikers to know where things are. So they're telling them where to get to your site. So scattering them is a good idea, so that they are no longer that marker, and people will no longer use that as a way to get to your site. We used to have where the National Park Service did not want us to scatter these, but the new National Park Service cultural resource manager said, no, just take pictures before and after. So we're to do scattering of these. And then also if you have a collector's pile or if you have a rock cairn, they're important to have to distribute. The collector's piles also, the way that it works, collector's piles are also when you find a whole bunch of the artifacts together, you're going to want to make sure that nobody else can collect them. So the whole point is to get rid of them so nobody else will collect them. However, Stan, the person who asked this question, stewards for St. Thomas, don't do anything to those collector's piles at St. Thomas. That is a very specific area, and those are long-term things. And one, you're going to be picking up rusty and sharp glass and rusty metal and stuff like that, which isn't good for you. And two, they're actually monitoring those. I wish they would go away, as much as I would like to redistribute them, but they don't seem to go away. And Lake Mead has taken the stance of just leaving them there, but recording that they're there and taking a recording every time you go out. Okay. So now we're going to talk about paperwork. And a lot of people said that paperwork is one of the harder things. So the monitoring form. So like I said, if you have a site assignment form, that makes this a little easier. But if you don't, that's okay too. What you're going to do is you're going to put your site name if your site has a name. You'll put a site number if your site has a number. If you have a site assignment form, it will have both of those things on it. The date, then you put the names of who's going out. And then everybody who drives is a driver. So basically means that if two of you drive, or somebody drives to somebody else's house, and then they both go together to wherever the site is, and they come back and that person goes home, even though that person only drove like 20 miles total, they would get a 20 miles on there, a round trip mileage. And then the other person will get whatever the mileage was from their house all the way out to the site and back. So those are both drivers, but they should only get the mileage their actual car drove. So not if two people are in the same vehicle, only one of them gets the mileage because one of them is driving, the other one isn't. The hours, if you think about the hours like you're a professional archaeologist, you get up in the morning, you get to work, you have to put all the paperwork together for the field stuff that you're going to. Then you go out to the field, you go to the site, you do whatever you need to do there, you drive back, you write up your report, and then you go home at the end of the, at the end of the workday. For all those hours, from the point of preparing to go out all the way to the writing up of the report, those are the hours that you should list on the hours. So we don't need them broken down in any way whatsoever, and they don't need to be absolutely accurate. We try to round it up to the half hour / hour. So give us a guesstimate if you don't know the exact, we don't mind. The cost incurred is less important than the miles and the hours, but it is a good way to be able to show the agencies how much money you're spending on them. And they can utilize that information as well. Okay, your agency and office. An agency means whether you're on BLM land, National Park Service land, Forest Service land, any of those, you're going to put that there. And then the agency office, field office, all of that is the specific area you're at. So if you are in Carson City and you are monitoring an area called Dry Lakes, then your agency office is, you can say the Carson District Office, or you can say the Sierra Front Field Office. Either one will work. And stick with that. You can also, like I said, find this on your set assignment form. If you don't know, let me know, and I will try to remind you when you send it in which one you need to put in there. Then we have the impact level, which I will go over in a second, but it's just basically a flag. It's telling us this was really, really damaged. You need to look at this now, versus there's no damage. There's nothing going on at the site. There's nothing to worry about. Okay, and then the comments and concerns, like I said earlier, when you go through the nature of impact and all those checkboxes, what we really need in the comments and concerns is a description of what you saw when you were there, a description of any changes, a description of all that. Even if you don't check any of those boxes, the comments and concerns are important. However, if your site has no change, you can just write no change. Finally, we have impact photos versus baseline photos. I will go over photography in a minute as we go through the next few slides. Site action guidelines. So if you guys look at the packet that I gave you that says NSSP monitoring report packet, you will see that you have the monitoring report, and then you'll see these guidelines. So those impact levels that I said that are in the middle of the monitoring report are listed here. So an impact level 0 is no change. An impact level 1 is minor change. An impact level 2 is disturbed. Impact level 3 is damaged. And impact level 4 is looters or vandals at the site. So when you have a no change, you just complete the report within 3 days of going out, and then get it to me. I need to update what this says here. We are going to show you a new way to submit these things. But get it to me as soon as you can. But I don't mind if you go out to the site and then you don't get it to me for another month. I'm okay with that. Or a couple months, that's fine too. Whatever you do, the report is still important, because the report adds a layer of another part of the history of that site into our files, and that way, whenever something does happen to the site, we have that. We know on that date nothing had changed. So even negative reports are really important for us to get. Then the impact level 1, minor disturbance. A lot of times this is trash or increased foot traffic, things like that, new trails. Impact level 2, things have been disturbed, moved around. Collectors' piles are one of those things. All the artifacts have been collected from elsewhere and are put in this one spot. So that's an impact level 2. And you definitely should take a picture before you redistribute them. Then minor graffiti that's not directly on the resource, so not directly on whatever it is that you are monitoring. Large amounts of trash. The sign is down. So there's a sign in the area and it's fallen over or it's got graffiti on it. Then we have, so when you go to submit this report, it's within 3 days, like the previous one. Impact level 3 is the site is damaged. Somebody's actually damaged it. Now there's a couple of different levels of damage, but we don't really go into the details with it. We have a site called Calico 2. Greg's probably groaning as I'm talking about. That gets my most heavily hit our site in the entire state. Every couple of weeks, we get a notice of graffiti at this site. The graffiti is often on the rock art. And when a graffiti is on the rock art, it's an impact level 3. But it happens so often that calling all emergency services, like me dispatch and all of that, it's a little bit much. So for that one, we just say get the report in as fast as possible. We think that impact level 3, when you want to call emergency services, when you need to make phone calls, should be an impact level when so much damage that it makes you sick inside. So this particular image, there was a rock art panel on this wall on the left, and somebody cut it out of the wall and it fell onto the ground, and the broken bits they decided weren't good enough to take with them, so they left them there, and that's what you see on the ground. And so that kind of thing where you're like, my rock art panel is no longer on the wall is a huge thing. It makes you feel really sick inside. And so you really want to, that's when you need to call a whole bunch of people, just call them. Sad thing about this was then the BLM collected these rocks. They took them with them to their office. They sat in their office for about 5 years. And then eventually the BLM decided they wanted to put them back. So they took the petroglyphs and they put them back on the shelf that you see. And it took a crane and a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of time to get it all there. And then the part that makes us even more sad, which also ended up in it was also like a major impact level 3, let's make phone calls, was somebody decided, they brought their truck over, they pulled that rock art panel that was sitting on that shelf down and took it with them. And now it's gone. I got a phone call as soon as my regional coordinator could get into cell service. She was calling me going, they put it back up and it's been 2 weeks and it's gone. So yeah, you'll know when you need to make those phone calls, because you'll know when it's something where you're just like, oh my God, what's going on? This isn't right. So, but otherwise, impact level 3s are whenever there's damage. So you can see scratching, graffiti, you can see severe trash. You can see digging, but you don't know if it's really heavy duty, if it's heavy duty digging and stuff like that, then that's probably when you want to make a phone call. But you don't know if it's animal digging or human digging and things like that. You can put it as a level 3, and then we will assess from there. One of the things you do, and Logan went through this, is treat it like a crime scene, take pictures without moving around the area very much, note where your footprints are, don't collect anything, and call everybody as soon as possible. Impact level 4 is looters at the site. That's the only time when it's an impact level 4. And that basically say, don't explore the area or approach the people. Safely gather information on your way out. Logan talked all about this. And then start calling people when you get a chance. So we've gone through all of that. Now I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to open up chat so I can see it. Would you guys like me to go through and fill out a monitoring form for you? We have our monitoring forms on our website. There is a address on this page. We have them in PDF, Word, Excel, and rich text. I've been told that on Macs, they can work on the rich text and the PDFs, but it's hit or miss on certain things. And we have them now, we've updated them, so a lot of them are smart forms, which makes it a little harder for older computers to access, but I've also made sure that there are older versions also on the website. So there's a bunch of different things to choose from. And if you have any problems accessing any of that, let me know. You can immediately just go in and download it, and I'll show you what the page looks like when you do that. We also put tips and examples in there. So I put into your monitoring report packet, monitoring report, the site action guidelines, the Photolog. Our Photolog looks a little different. We have a new column that says impact photo. I was getting baseline photos where I was getting like 60 photos in one go, and then there was an impact on one of them, and I had to read through the entire Photolog to find the one. And so this just makes it easier for us to pinpoint the important ones, the ones that we need to look at right away. And then I gave you guys our reporting tips page where I try to answer as many of the common questions I get from stewards. And I gave you also examples of how to fill out monitoring forms. But I'm happy to fill one out here if people are interested.
So do you want people to, since you don't have a poll on this, just have them type in the chat if they're interested?
Yes.
So just write yes in the chat if you want to see her do that.
I don't mind if you guys take a minute to look through the packets. Yes. Okay. Stop sharing.
Okay.
While I'm doing that.
So we got in the question and answer some feedback that they use a Mac, so they use the rich text or PDF forms, yes. And they also use Google Docs. And so now that you've gone over this, they're a little more comfortable about doing it. So that's awesome.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry, I didn't have it keyed up already.
All right, so we've got some, could this be done as, this has already gone kind of long, can this be done as separate video? So do you think we could hold off on the filling out the paperwork until the end? And those who want to stick around to see how to fill out the form can watch it, and then we can skip ahead to how to submit it, because that's what's new.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
That's a good, because we have some yeses and some nos.
Okay.
So that'll probably, that way people can stick around.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. That will probably be a little easier on all sides. So, okay, then let me reshare the presentation. There is a, okay. Sure. All right, so when you do report impacts on the impact levels, because they're not absolute, so you never have to like worry, should I give it a 1 or a 2? Just send us the stuff and guess which one you want to put it on, and then we'll adjust it if we need to. After you've reported an impact, when you go back out, if it's the same impact that you saw previously, the impact level is 0. There is no change. You don't need to put another flag there saying graffiti if it's old graffiti that you saw previously. What you can do is in those comments and concerns, write out what it is that you are, what is still there. Say the impact, the damage is still there. Can you please, can somebody please go and do something? Or you could just say, in this case, the sign is still down, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And realize that all your reports go to the archaeologist. So they're going to see all the exclamation marks and everything on there too. So it's not like your stuff gets filtered in any sort of way before it goes to them. So feel like you're talking to them because you are explaining to them what you are seeing. Okay, photography. I did a presentation on how to record your site like a crime scene, and the photography part I think did a pretty good job of showing people why we take the pictures we do. So when you're photographing a crime scene, you're going to take a picture of the whole crime scene. And then you're going to take a picture of the areas around it. You're going to take pictures of the what's at the site, the artifacts, and where the features are, where the body was, and all of those things. And then you're going to put together a photo log. So in order to show people what's going on at the crime scene, they have to show them a big overview of what's going on, like of the whole crime scene. Then you do a moderate view of here's where the impact was, kind of thing, and then an up close views for details. When we take photos, we would like for you guys to take a photo of the entire site, just the same. And if you have a really big site, then you could just take a bunch of overview photos of the site, loci, where there's a grouping of features and artifacts. And of the site features, like if there's specific features, and then important artifacts. We don't really need to go and take a picture of every artifact. And if you have a rock art site, you do not need to take a picture of every single glyph. You're just going to want to take photos that are good to review so that if something happens, you can go, here's a comparative photo. And then when there's new damage, you're going to take a picture of the new damage, but you're also going to stand back and show where it is in the grand scheme of things and prepare a photo log. So for example, in this one, we have a big overview of where the panel is. And then we have an view of the whole panel. And then we have up close view of the specific glyphs we were looking at. So these kind of photos are important to be able to tell us the story of where these particular glyphs are in the grand scheme of things. Otherwise, you could just see that panel and think and not realize that there's so much stone and it's on a hill and there's so much stuff around it. So you're kind of telling us a story. Now, at a crime scene, photo logs is really important for them to fill out because they need to know what the pictures are and why it's important. And so they basically say, you can see the type of photo. So evidence establishing, we took this picture because it's establishing evidence, showing the evidence. And then what's the picture of the shell casing on the floor. And they go into detail on distance and things like that. But, they also did an overview, a 3D 360 degree group of photos of the walls and the floor and the dresser and all of that. So that way they can show where everything is in the room, and then they can take pictures of the key evidence and in up close details. So they have a picture of where the pistol is on the floor, and then they have a picture of the pistol on the floor at right where the pistol is. So things like that. So when you're doing the steward photo log, we want you to tell us the image number is important in that it should be the same as whatever the photo file is that you're sending us. So if you have a JPEG, whatever the JPEG name is, and then you can put it on here under image number, name, and then impact photo if it's a photo of damage to the site or changes to the site that we need to look at. And then in your photo description, you want to do the what, why, and where. You actually want to tell us what it is we're looking at, why is this, why are we looking at it, and where is it generally in the site. Now, you don't have to be, if you're doing a baseline and do like exceptional descriptions, but you could say baseline of panel 1 and put that there. Baseline of panel 1 petroglyphs. That tells us a whole bunch of information, and it's not very long. But especially when you do find graffiti, then you can say scratching graffiti, and you could write down what kind of scratching it is or whatever, something in there, so that way we know. And you can say that it's on the 3rd rock art panel in the site or something, where we can use your information to relocate that. The direction view, it's north, south, east, west. We don't actually expect you to do anything with degrees and things like that. It's just more of a giving the law enforcement officer a feel for which direction to be looking in. And then if you have a GPS, you can see on our screen, it says choose an item under GPS coordinate system. And a lot of our new forms have a drop down where you can select whether it's latitude and longitude or it's NAD 83. Or anything like that. And then if you don't see it there, you can always just write it on the log, and we will have that in there, because that that log, everything you write on there, that's what gets sent with the photos and saved with the photos. So you guys can put as much or as information as you can, and then take the GPS coordinates where you're taking your photo. So I'm standing here at this GPS coordinate taking a picture facing south, and then it's of this panel. And that way law enforcement knows that if they're standing in that spot looking south, they'll see the panel you're talking about. So why is it important to do this? And why is it important to do the photo baselines? So what baselines, like as Greg was talking about, is when you take a survey of your whole site, you take photos of your whole site. And we actually kind of want you to do it every 2 years or so. And why do we want you to do it? Because we want you to be able to relocate what's there. We want you to be able to use that later to be able to compare old damage to new damage. So if you find new damage and you're trying to remember whether it's old or not, you've got those photos to look at to go, oh yeah, it is old. Or, oh no, that's new. Okay, I need to report that. And things like that. So having those photos of your site helps you. And then explaining the location of damage to land managers and law enforcement, using the photos and the GPS. And remember, the photos can tell a story. If you do those up close and then you do stand back and you take a picture of the greater scheme of things, it does help you describe where the impact is in a greater part of the site by standing back and taking photos on a larger scale. So that way you can get an idea of, or anybody coming back there can know that's what the surrounding looks like. So it's important to be able to have all of those information, and it's important to do the baselines for your own self as well as for us. We like having the baseline so that we know this is what the whole site looked like at this date. And that really helps us out because the old baselines aren't, even if we did a thorough one 5 years ago, that doesn't tell us what happened in between. There may have been a lot of changes since then. So you doing a new one is actually important for us to have on this date, this is what the site looked like. Now, common assumptions for doing the baselines is that it's already been done. And like I just said, we can't assume that the one that was done has everything that you need or everything that's new on there. And we don't know how much the site has changed over time. So always doing a new one is a good one. And then that the recording was well done. I do have some sites where we don't have any baselines. Even though we've got stewards on them and things like that, we don't have any baselines. And that's just what happens. We have so many sites and so many stewards. And I don't tell you guys what you have to do or not. But never assume that we already have one. And then also sometimes the person who did it before you had blurry images and things like that. And so it's not very good. So you doing one now is a good idea anyway, because we don't have all that information. So never assume any of that. Realize there's so many sites in the state and so many sites in our program that us having thorough, quality, up-to-date information is not entirely true. Okay, so how are your recordings used by law enforcement and land managers? This is a famous dam that many of the stewards are going to recognize, Southern Nevada stewards are going to recognize, in Buffington Pockets. And in 2019, there was nothing going on there. And then in 2020, somebody decided to paint a really big owl on it. And that owl, to clarify, that dam is about 20 feet tall, maybe a little more. So that owl is huge. And law enforcement really needed the before and after images to know approximately when that owl showed up, to be able to get that date. And it became part of the investigation, is having those images of the before and after. So it was very helpful that stewards have taken pictures when they go out on a regular basis and send those in for us to be able to go, okay, we know in October it looked like this and by February it looked like that. So we have a good timeline. And that really helped law enforcement when they were doing their assessment of the site. I saw there was a question. Oh, Mariette got it. Okay, so your stuff does help with before and after. And when you do impact photos, those help as well. So that way, I can tell you right now, both of these photos were done by site stewards, and both of these photos went to law enforcement. So for your monitoring forms and your photo logs and all of that, like I said, you can find it on our website. And you can just click on one of these blue buttons and download them. If you have any problems, let me know.
Okay,
Okay.
Samantha and everybody who's listening, I'm gonna put together a bunch of notes from today's talk with links and like the phone numbers that Logan provided on his PowerPoint. That way you guys will have a reference for these pages and stuff like that.
Yes. And actually, and there's some reference for the pages as well in I believe in the resources packet that going to the resources packet that has some of the website stuff that I also sent out with your volunteer agreements. It just has our website under resource and stuff in it, but it's the new website, Resources for Active Stewards. And it's in your resources packet. And that just has our general, like the general website that you need to go to. And then you'll see that there's links to all of these sub pages or all these pages that are within that website. Okay, so I was going to do a description, an example of how we describe our photos. But basically, it's pretty much what I was telling you earlier, is just make sure that you describe what kind of, what it is we're looking at. So the white graffiti and what it says and things like that. And that way, in detail, we know we have that detail for law enforcement when they want to go back out. We have that detail so that way when we're looking at those photos years from now, which we do on a regular basis, we know what kind of graffiti has been in the past in case we see similar graffiti later. But it's much easier to figure that detail out by having a photo log that goes through and describes things. So like here we have an overview photo of a scratched graffiti and then the up close photo. And so we can say on our photo log that we had an overview photo and then we went up close to it. And we don't necessarily need GPS coordinates for each one when you're taking the same thing. Remember that there's a plus or minus of a certain, like 3 meters whenever you take a GPS point. So GPSing a whole bunch of things in a really small area is not as necessary, but GPS coordinates in general are helpful.
Okay, we got a couple timely questions here.
Sure.
When baselines are updated, should the sequence of pictures be the same?
Mm-hmm. They don't have to be. Unless you want them to be, they don't have to be.
No, that could be a lot of extra work. So it's up to you if you want to do the work or not. We'll take them either way.
We're just happy to get them.
Yeah, and then Mike chimed in and he said, my GPS does great photos. It would be great to be able to upload the metadata files to locate the photos.
A lot of your stuff gets tagged in those photos, and our photo database can identify a lot of the tagging. And so I'm about to show you all the photo database, but basically when the photos get uploaded, it has all the metadata in them. So that metadata is still moving around. So as long as you can get me the photos, that metadata we get to. However, just remember that not all as much as I'd like to say, not all the archaeologists think about metadata when they're trying to figure out where your photo is. So having a photo log would be good and helpful, but it's good and helpful more for the reason of we don't all look at the metadata to figure out the details. 1 and 2, you're going to take photos of things that you need to describe to me what they are. So I have a site where the graffiti artists made their own pectin glyphs. And the glyphs that were already there, the prehistoric ones, were pretty bright anyway. And the steward said, send me the photo of both glyphs, like all sitting there, and said graffiti. And you have to realize we haven't been to all of these sites. I've been to maybe 200 of them. That's really stretching it. Maybe more like 150 of them. And so when you're reporting your sites, I don't know what you're taking pictures of, because a lot of times I haven't been there. So I had no idea which one was the glyph, like which one was the glyph and which one was the graffiti. And so I needed him to describe to me what the graffiti was. And so having a Photolog really helps with that. But what you could do is take that home with you once you've taken all your pictures, and then write down the metadata information for each of them, or the details that you need, into a Photolog, so you don't have to do it in the field, if that makes it easier. It's just having that information where I know what you're taking pictures of, because otherwise I might not know. Like I showed you a picture earlier where that panel where I said that here's the overview of the panel up close. Unless somebody told me this was the overview of the panel, it just looked like another part of patina rock face on that area. I couldn't see the glyphs from that overview photo. So I needed somebody to actually write down what it is that I was looking at, so I knew why we were looking at it. That's the important part of the Photolog. But the rest of it, like I said, you could take it in the field and then bring it home and then just write it all out from there. Sorry, I can't make it easier than that.